Welcome, folks, to a special edition of Let's Chat with me, Meor Addelan, where we will be speaking about Budget 2021. And for those who still do not know, we have seen an unprecedented amount of budget that has been proposed by the Minister of Finance, in which that last year it was about 290 billion ringgit that was proposed, but this time around we have a bigger number, which is 322.5 billion ringgit for budget 2021. Now, what are all of these numbers represent? This is what we're going to be talking about today. What's in the numbers when we talk about budget 2021? The increment, the gifts, the help that the government is assisting all of us from across the board. I have a very special guest who is the professor of the Faculty of Economics and Management of UKM. Ladies and gents, allow me to introduce you, Professor Dr. Jamal Othman. To your own personal opinion, for what you have gathered, for what you have studied, what was tabled last week in regards of the budget 2021, what are the things that you personally would like to highlight for today's episode, Prof, if you will?
First and foremost, it's my sense that much of the elements of the 2021 budget are actually consistent to my expectation. Not all though, but a lot of it are very much according to my expectation. In particular, the large expansionary budget or allocation offered by our government to our people, which includes businesses, households, and various institutions, including government agencies as well. So a large expansionary budget is actually my expectation.
When you talk about large expansionary budget, it is definitely on the good for us people, for us the rakyat, because again, more money that is being allocated for us, the much better condition that we will definitely have, especially during this testing times, during this COVID era. But I do want to touch about, again, as what you expected, this is what the ministry has proposed. But your wish list yourself, did it match in any way, shape, or form what you actually wanted to see versus what you actually expected to see?
Well, my personal view, given my passion, in agriculture, particularly the food economic. To me, food is something that goes beyond business. It's about life itself. It's about life sustenance. So it shouldn't be viewed as similar to any other industrial goods or outputs, and it should be given a special place. And I would think that there is no time better than the time that we are in now to give more prominent, more highlights, and particularly more budgets allocated to the food sector. We wanted to see a very strong food security being in place in our country, as well as food sovereignty much in place in our countries. It's not just about having access to cheap food. It's about being able to produce the food ourselves, such that when we are in the face of any turbulence, any macroeconomic crisis, this particular aspect of our life, this particular aspect of welfare is being ensured that we shall be able to have access at any time.
Again, when we talk about how the budget has been allocated, there's no denying the fact that a chunk of it has been given more towards the raising, towards the infrastructure of communications, of telecommunications, of digitalization of the nation. Granted, yes, of course, there are some allocation that has been set aside for, as you mentioned, agriculture and everything. Is it just the trend that right now, moving forward, one thing precedes the other, hence one needs more attention versus the other sectors? What do you think?
Well, I must say here that not entirely, there is no mention at all. First and foremost, we must understand that this budget is a continuation of related economic packages that the government has been offering us, like the Penjana package and the two Prihatin packages. So this budget is just a continuation because we are still in the same situation, the same pandemic situation, and we are still living with the COVID-19, perhaps till next year. And we know that in the Prihatin or Panjana packages, there is quite a strong mention about support given to agriculture. For example, the various area level farmers organizations have been given grants to some, I think, to a number of hundreds of thousands per area farmers organization, and to generate food or to be involved in food production. This has been one of the strong programs in our Prihatin. So it's also mentioned in the budget. For example, the same area farmers organizations are being allocated, a number of thousands for the purchase of some equipment related to the digital economy. I imagine that would be in the end related to food as well. So I must say there is some mention about food there, but it's not really prominent. I would expect it should be given more prominent there.
Yeah, I guess again, looking at the whole ideology of being in power, there's no way that you can actually satisfy each and everyone out there. The government has a very tough task in trying to prioritize what needs to be the better thing to concentrate on versus something that can live in within their own environment to be said, because the fact that there are things that we need to concentrate even more. Coming on to that, Prof, yes, we talk about digitalization. We talk about how much Panjana and all of this incentives, all of this program has been implemented or even extended even more to help the micro business owners, the SME owners, and everything. What is the outlook then for these people? Granted, the government has been doing a lot of things, giving out grants, proposing grants, and proposing such fund to them. Can the micro SMEs owners survive on these things alone?
Well, if your concern is about whether or not the SMEs are able to survive based on this, what the government can provide to them alone, certainly that wouldn't be the objective, I suppose. The objective of the government is to provide some support so that these hardships, the burdens, will not be entirely borne by themselves, such that some of them may actually quit the industry. So this should be seen as a kind of relief given to those SMEs. It wouldn't be enough though. Well, in anything, the government can only do so much, and furthermore, we cannot blame the government for what happens. It's such a shock to us, a shock to the world. It came out of the blue, and certainly the government can only do so much. And we have seen from the budget, it's such a huge budget in terms of quantum and also in terms of the deficit that the government is ready to endure.
We've heard that, how the government is saying that, the EPF account holders can actually access to their number one account right now, and then EPF, they don't have to pay as much as before, a decrease of 2% rather than paying 11%. Now they are paying only 9% for the EPF contribution, and furthermore, the Bumi Putras actually got a bump on the help that they are getting. All of this said, it gives an impact to the country itself, because again, there's no denying the fact that the country is still in such a large debt out there. How is this going to help the country as a whole?
Well, the key channel is consumption now rather than later. For example, by giving, by agreeing to the depositors or to those contributors to EPF Account 1, by letting them withdraw some part of their deposits or their savings, this will lead to consumption now rather than later. Although it's actually not income, to those who might want to withdraw. It's not income to them. It's actually using their future consumption now, okay? Rather than using it later, they use it now. So it's not really an income, but rather their would-be future consumption is being brought forward. Anyway, but in the end, it leads to consumption. And consumption is important in terms of generating the multiplier effects in the economy. In fact, 60% of our GDP is composed of consumption. And now the reduction in EPF contribution from 11 to 9, also that would lead to higher disposable income, which will be reflected hopefully in the end in terms of consumption, private consumption again. Consumption is the key channel that leads towards these multiplier effects in the economy, such that in the end our GDP will grow.
That's a great thing, because again, people may not realize that. Yeah, I mean, like with with more spending as individuals, you will in turn help the government in regards to economy, because when there's more power purchasing out there, any purchasing for that matter on a larger scale or a lower scale, it will directly or indirectly impact the government in regards of raising the economy.
Yeah. Another good example of consumption is consumption on food, particularly restaurants. The tourists, before the pandemic, there were huge influx of tourists to Malaysia, and they were having great time in our restaurants, and that really had a very strong multiplier effect in the economy. Let's say we are, for some reasons, we are not being allowed to, to go to restaurants and have a good thing with our family, things like that, like during the PKP, right? Remember that? So that affects consumption in our restaurants, services somehow drop a lot, and multiply effect from the economic analysis in terms of interlinkages analysis. Restaurant as an economic sector leads to one of the highest multiplier effects. Again, the key channel is consumption.
Yes, granted, with all of this candies and chocolates that the government is giving out, increasing, as I mentioned, across all borders for the rakyat to ease themselves during these testing times and everything. Do you think personally that we as rakyat as a whole is disciplined enough to actually take all of these things and work for the better, and not just take it as, wow, this is free money, now I can buy that mobile phone, now I can buy that car, now I can buy that laptop or whatnot? Where do you think Malaysians in general stand in being disciplined, in being proper, understanding where we are in right now?
Malaysia especially in particular, they don't go for savings, if it is by their own initiative, it's difficult more often than not for them to save. They got to be forced to save, like doing that forced EPF contribution, then only they will save. Anyway, back to that example of EPF account 1 withdrawal. Initially, when I was asked by the media, I would say, yes, why not? Given the situation that we are in, we are like in a firefighting mode. Everything really matters, because there's almost no alternative that used to be available to us. But the situation now is different. But give it as a conditional agreement, not a one-off kind of thing. They should be able to show proof or documentation that they are really in a hardship, real hardship, where there is no other choices that could alleviate that kind of hardships. And of course, the hardship must be related to the COVID-19 thing. And with that kind of documentation or proof, then only the banks might be compelled to provide, the necessary support in terms of course, account 1 withdrawal. I'm talking here about EPF. Then EPF shall give the agreement, and the banks would only would then be the recipient rather than the borrowers or the depositors here in the context of EPM accounts. So EPM shall pay directly to the bank rather than via the applicant, which may be prone or which may be abused later on. That's in response to your question. Yeah, disciplines are very important, and we can expect, we can hope, but in the end, there must be mechanism that would minimize, that would avoid any kind of abuse in terms of the use of, in this case, the account 1 withdrawal.
Yeah, I mean, like with all the numbers that we have heard, with all the incentives that the government is giving out, planning to give out, it is us, the rakyat, the Malaysians, to be really really understand, to really understand what's going on, be disciplined enough, and hope for a better future. And it starts with you personally. I believe that. So, Professor Dr. Jamal Othman, Professor of the Faculty of Economics and Management of UKM. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on to the show. Really appreciate it. And good luck in your future endeavors, sir. Thank you. All right, folks, that was our special guest, Professor Dr. Jamal, talking about, yes, whatever it is, the government could give you out billions and billions of ringgit, but if you yourself personally do not know how to manage your finance properly and assuredly, there's no ways about it, you will also still suffer. Practice, proper financial discipline, look out for all those investments, good investments on that, and be thrifty as you can. It's not about luxuries right now, it's about necessities. And at the end, be a good Malaysian and strive forward right now. Thank you guys for staying on the show. Hope to see you guys again on the next one. Take care now. Goodbye.